Wrestle Rant HD Old School. This week, we are going to talk about everything that we love and miss about professional wrestling. And if you're like me, there's a lot that you love and miss about professional wrestling. No, I did not say sports entertainment. I said professional wrestling. Fans, I love professional wrestling. That's no secret, and I know you do too. I know that you love all of the action in the ring, as well as a good story to go along with it. Something juicy to sink your teeth into week after week. And as we struggle to get that in the present tense each and every week, well, sometimes it helps us to reflect, to go back, way back to the way back. Back when a jerry curl was the style. Back when combing your hair in a pompadour and wearing bell bottoms in the early 80s was still a good thing. Listen, if you're just one of those people who can't get rid of the jerry curl or the bell bottoms, God help you, let me be the one to take you on a trip to the golden era of professional wrestling. Now, let's talk about the number one thing that was everybody's favorite thing to talk about and watch on TV in the 1980s in professional wrestling. I'm talking about Hulkamania. Now, fans, I was a Hulkamaniac a long time ago. I grew up a Hulkamaniac. Listen, if you were a kid in the 80s, you either loved Hulk Hogan or the Ultimate Warrior, who I'll get to a little later. These were the people that you looked up to. Someone who was a John Wayne, an Optimus Prime, the strength of the company. I'm talking Hulkamania. Bandanas, ice cream bars, posters, signs, you name it. If it had Hulk Hogan's name on it, it sold. You could have put his name on a booger and it would have sold. And I'm talking one of the big, long, juicy ones that you have to work out of your nose. Anyway, Hulkamania was probably one of the #1 selling products for the WWF at that time. Hulk Hogan, Hulkamania, Hulkster, and all of these products, which belong to then Titan Sports, now World Wrestling Entertainment, was one of the best things. I mean, man, there wasn't anything about Hulkamania that you couldn't like. Whether it was those one-on-one promos with Mean Gene Brother, or just what he did in the ring, here in the United States and Japan. I loved all of his matches. Well, some of them, not all of them. I mean, some of them were absolutely explosive. Some of them, well, the ones that didn't make it to TV, there was a reason for that. The ones he had in Japan, fans, if you ever get the time, look them up. They are some of the greatest matches of Hulk Hogan's career. He truly was the best professional athlete in professional sports at that time. Hats off to an era that I don't think ever should have ended. Hulkamania. Let's talk about the Ultimate Warrior, the man from parts unknown. Now, I got a pet peeve here. I got a bone to pick with the WWE about the Ultimate Warrior. Number one, the Ultimate Warrior was just as popular as Hulk Hogan then. Now, I told you earlier that Hulk Hogan was popular in the 80s, but so was the Ultimate Warrior. Ask any little kid in the 80s who their favorite professional wrestler was, and they'd either say Hulk Hogan or the Ultimate Warrior. You can't offend an Ultimate Warrior fan by saying Hulk Hogan's better, nor a Hulk Hogan fan by saying Ultimate Warrior's better. The Ultimate Warrior was on the same keel as the immortal Hulk Hogan. The Ultimate Warrior had the energy. He possessed the power from parts unknown to run out of that dressing room, run through that curtain, run down to that ring when the music played, and dazzle the crowd. Now, all of his matches weren't great. Because, after all, the Warrior was known for this. Going out there and, well, if you happen to be the person who was unfortunate enough to work with him, hurting you, and or messing up in a major way that could mess you up in a major way. But, all of that aside, I think that the Ultimate Warrior delivered a great product. I don't care what Vince McMahon says, and herein lies my bone to pick. I don't care about the stupid self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior DVD. Hey, listen, the guy had problems. Everybody does. I'm not making excuses for the Ultimate Warrior, but I am saying this. You cannot tarnish the man's good name just because he made mistakes, just because he had an ego. In professional wrestling, everyone does. Listen and listen well for those of you watching. I want you to know that it was completely terrible for the WWE to make this video called The Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. Warrior, I want you to know that I think that WWE benefited from your very presence every single time you were in the building, in the ring, or passed through that curtain. Yeah, some of your matches stunk. Hey, everybody's got those matches. At least you weren't as bad as John Cena. Let me say this. Ultimate Warrior, I tip my professional wrestling hat to you. No matter what Vince McMahon says, no matter what the rest of the people in the WWE with their lips on Vince McMahon's butt say, Ultimate Warrior, I happen to enjoy the product that you delivered every single time. Well, almost every single time. Good job, Ultimate Warrior. Moving right along. Okay, let's talk about my favorite things. Some of my favorite things for old school professional wrestling. Now, obviously I don't have them all up here, but I did my best to try to get them all on this tiny screen. After all, it's just 40 inches. Let me say this. I miss primetime wrestling. I miss Wrestling Challenge. I miss the superstars of wrestling. Don't you? And I miss 12 o'clock afternoons on USA with All American Wrestling. Whether it was Mean Gene standing next to Lord Alfred Hayes, or Mean Gene standing next to Hillbilly Jim, or the Macho Man, or Bobby the Brain Heenan. I miss those good old days. The good old days when they would play a commercial and make you want to buy a Slim Jim. The good old days when you wanted that WWE ice cream bar, not like we don't now. The good old days when you would buy a t-shirt and wear it like a bandana. I'm talking, I miss the golden era of professional wrestling. I mean, primetime wrestling was one of the best venues to watch a wrestling match that was probably just a dark match, and you could see it on TV. Now, we have dark matches on TV all the time. 1 hour, Superstars on Sci-Fi Channel. Man, some matches just shouldn't be televised. Anyway, some of the matches on primetime wrestling were great, along with the shtick between Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby the Brain Heenan. Later on, it became a big giant table with Bobby the Brain Heenan, Gorilla Monsoon, Hillbilly Jim, and then later on, Mr. Perfect and Vince McMahon sitting at the head of the table to try to keep all the chaos in control. Fans, I miss this era. I miss Gorilla Monsoon standing next to Bobby the Brain Heenan, the Weasel, and Bobby the Brain Heenan with his ever-loving, responsive ham and egger. I miss those days of professional wrestling before Raw. Yeah, Raw was revolutionary when it started, but you gotta admit, when Vince McMahon said that primetime wrestling was coming to an end, fans, if you're like me, you did shed a tear. Because that was truly the end of an era. This is WrestlerAnt HD Old School. Don't you go anywhere, because we're still going back all the way back to the way back. Wrestle Rant HD Old School.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Gotta have beef. Gotta have spice. Need a little excitement? Snap into a Slim Jim. Ooh, yeah. New WWE action figures are here. Ricky Steamboat wants to take on the Macho Man. Ooh, yeah. WWE action figures so close, it's just like the real thing. Ooh, yeah. Welcome back to wrestlerant HD Old School. Hey, we've talked about a lot of stuff here on wrestlerant HD Old School, but fans, this is only the tip of the iceberg. Now, we talked about a lot of things, but we didn't talk about something else that I miss. And I'm going to bring it up right now before I go to my next subject, and that is this. I miss Saturday night's main event. Man, Saturday night's main event was the next best thing to a pay-per-view without paying for it. Now, there's no Saturday night's main event. Sure, they tried to revive it a couple of times, but it didn't work. And do you know why? Because the elements of entertainment that we had then versus the elements of entertainment that we have now are terrible. Talk about your apples and your oranges. Well, if what we're being given today are apples, I think we're getting some rotten apples. Now, let's talk about my next subject because it was one of my favorite during the 80s. And that is this. The Stinger. From the 80s into the 90s, I was not only a Hulkamaniac, yours truly was one of those little bitty stingers. One of those stingers who would look in the mirror, lift up his head, hold his hands up to his mouth and shout, "Ow!" Because Sting was, in fact and indeed, the Hulk Hogan of the WCW World Championship Wrestling. Now, a lot of people don't want to admit it, but you might have been a little kid running around with your face painted, having your hair all the way up in that box cut with a little rat tail in the back. You wanted to be just like Sting. You wanted to put a scorpion deathlock on somebody long before you wanted to slap a sharpshooter on. Let me tell you something. Sting, one of the most beneficiary characters to the business of professional wrestling ever, and is still benefiting professional wrestling to this day. Sting's character is iconic and will live on forever. Thank you, Steve Borton, Sting, for doing everything that you've done in this business for the professional wrestling fan. Whether it was picking Big Van Vader up and body slamming him, or wrestling Ravishing Rick Rude in some of those great United States title matches, or whether it was you and Lex Luger's war in WCW, the list goes on and on and on. Sting, I cannot thank you enough for the benefit that you have given to the business of professional wrestling. Man, I miss Sting, and I know that some of you do. I just mean I miss the Sting from the 80s. Hey, forgive a guy for living in the past, but sometimes that's where I park my car. Okay, now we're going to talk about a very sensitive subject. Sensitive because there's not a lot of them anymore. Not unless you watch TNA. Total Nonstop Action has has the best tag team roster in professional wrestling on television, unless you watch Ring of Honor. WWE seriously lacks in this department. A company once known for its lavish tag team roster in the locker room, now has nothing in the locker room for tag teams. Instead, they meshed together two people. I don't want to say any names. One suspended Evan Bourne and one Kofi Kingston together and give them the tag team titles. I mean, forget the Usos, and what about the Dude Busters? Where'd the other Dude Buster go? Dude! Look, tag teams are the most important element of professional wrestling. They're the background of the business. Listen, professional wrestling, honestly, isn't that great without the tag teams. Everybody loves a good tag team just as much as they love a great singles competitor. And I get off on a rant, if you will, about tag teams every now and again on this program. And that is because I want companies like World Wrestling Entertainment to know you need to restore professional wrestling in World Wrestling Entertainment. Don't get two ham and eggers from the back of the locker room and say, hey, Joe and Mo, you're going to go out there and wrestle together. Form tag teams. Get somebody that's been working with their partner for a long time, and then put these teams on the scene. You've got a 2-hour program. Come on. It can't all be about John Cena and Randy Orton and The Miz and R-Truth and Triple H. Tag teams are definitely where it's at, WWE. And that goes for anybody else neglecting the tag team division. Now, we talked about tag teams. This is more of a faction. More of the very first popular faction in professional wrestling. The Four Horsemen. Arn Anderson, Ole Anderson, Ric Flair, and Tully Blanchard. And as the years went on, more were added to the list. Barry Windham, Lex Luger, some say Sting, although he was never really an official member of the Four Horsemen, and definitely Big Sid Vicious. Now, it is important for you to know as a professional wrestling fan that the Four Horsemen paved the way for any faction, I don't care who you're thinking of, to come along in the future. Without the Nature Boy Ric Flair and his $1,000 suits and his strutting and his going down the aisle styling and profiling and that $7,500 gold NWA belt that, by the way, he helped pay for, that he held up in front of that camera each and every week, professional wrestling factions would be nothing. The Four Horsemen, one of the most legendary factions in the business. Each one, whether it was Tully, Arn, Ole, and or Rick, cut some of the best promos in the business and can still be looked back on today and used as a schoolmaster to cut promos, which some of you professional wrestlers need to do today. And it disturbs me that you aren't looking back to more of that type of thing to cut a promo. It's okay to mess up. You might actually do something good when you mess up. It's okay. But know this. If we don't go back to our roots, if we don't get back to the roots in professional wrestling, then the future of professional wrestling is severely going to suffer. Fans, last but not least, let's talk about something that I've talked about before on a past program called wrestlerant HD, the TNA edition. Only this time I'm going to get a little bit more in depth with the NWA. In that the NWA was one of the best, no matter what people tell you, no matter what Vince McMahon wants you to believe. It was rival competition for him in the 80s. At 6:05 or even 7:05 Eastern Time on a Saturday night, who didn't want to turn on TBS to watch WCW and watch the Four Horsemen, watch Barry Windham, watch Jimmy Boogie Woogie Valiant? Let me tell you something. We are missing the greatest era that we ever had. And that was NWA WCW. Not only did we have great professional wrestling and great promos, but I guess toward the end we had some really big mistakes. Let me point out the biggest one. And I want everybody sitting next to their computer to listen to this very carefully, because I'm going to make a serious point here. When WCW decided to take on the immortal Hulk Hogan and give him a contract and bring Jimmy Hart in and Brutus the Barber Beefcake with Hulk Hogan to WCW, that was one of the biggest mistakes ever. Now some of you are saying, has Mr. WrestlerAnt lost his mind? What's he talking about? You basically took Hulk Hogan away from his fan base, where he was beloved, and brought him into the fan base of someone, namely Sting, who was already that company's Hulk Hogan. If some of you recall, when Hulk Hogan came into WCW, when he debuted, he was booed coming in the door. Hulk Hogan essentially was booed coming in the door of WCW fans. And let me say this, it is because Sting was the NWA WCW's Hulk Hogan. He was that company's ice cream bar, that company's bandana, that company's t-shirt. And what did WCW do? They spat all over him by giving Hulk Hogan his esteemed position as the head of that company. I'm sorry that that ever happened, because as a little Stinger, I knew, even as a child, how to divide the two. You were with WWF, you liked Hulk Hogan. You were with WCW, you loved Sting. You didn't clash the two together. So big mistake for those of you watching that actually ran the company of WCW. And Eric, if that's you watching, well, Mr. Bischoff, then I mean you. Well, fans, this has been WrestleRant HD Old School. I hope you have enjoyed it, as I hope you enjoy each and every episode of WrestleRant HD every week. Till then, this is Angelo Demetrius saying tune in here at YouTube.com and at ClickWrestle.com, or wherever WrestleRant HD is played on the web. I want you to come back next week for this program, the same time, each and every week. Fans, I love professional wrestling. I certainly hope you do too. For WrestleRant HD, good! Bye, everybody.